80% through, and we're going to go to the practical thermaling technique next, and then we'll do the last section.
Sorry, Ria, can you just go back to the previous slide? Turning in zero, but that's what you covered. There's just a word missing, it feels like it. Number F,
oh, the
number
comma.
3F.
Yeah.
Sorry, just repeat that.
Yeah, it should have been a full stop. Turning is zero is still going up, meaning
okay.
that there's air that's going up, that's maintained, that allowing you to maintain your altitude and not descend any further. So there is rising air. It's just currently not strong enough that you're going up, but you are not going down. So that is lift.
Okay, copy that. Thank you.
Cool. Practical techniques. This is something I started off in the beginning saying that I'm happy stealing from other people. I really believe this is the way to learn and how you should be improving yourself. If there's people who have stuff out there that works, try it. And if it works for you, use it. So in this case over here, we're going to be talking about the 4-second rule, specifically 4 for 90. And this comes from Kelly Farina. And the book that he's written is Mastering Paragliding. We'll talk a little bit at the end about it. But anyway, he's come out with this. And as a junior pilot, when I started doing this particular technique was the first time that I got to cloud base. And I was, flying out there in Porterville and getting decently high, flying by myself and so on. And I was sold on it. And it's an easy rule to understand and for my logical brain as well to implement. We're not talking about how steep the turn must be. We're just talking about how quickly you should be doing it, which will translate into a bang to wing. So before we get into that rule, you might have heard the saying that when your vario starts beeping, you want to wait a few seconds, typically 3 to 4 seconds, and then turn. And the reason for that is you don't want to turn so early that you're on the edge of the thermal and then you turn and you're out of it. So you want to give yourself a chance to get into the thermal and then start turning. When we talk about 4 seconds, it is 4 seconds. It is not 1, 2, 3, 4. It's easy to do that, especially when your mind is excited. You want to give yourself a count. Some people go 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. I like to go 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Various ways, but the point is we want to do 4 seconds. If you flew straight into a thermal, directly into it, and there's no neither side of your wing or your harness is lifted up, you will just fly straight and then you will turn. If you felt that it was the left-hand side of your wing that lifted up, perhaps your harness, you feel your left hip rocks up, gets jolted up. The reason for that is because the lift is on the left-hand side, and that's why and your left-hand wingtip encountered this lift, which caused this whole left side to rock up. And instead of, it's easy to think, oh, the bumpiness and shit, but just think to yourself, okay, this side's lifted, that means the lift is over there, I must turn to the left. Same thing if it's on the right-hand side, you will turn to the right. Now I'm going to talk about turning direction a little bit later, but this is just getting yourself to the thermal. So we go into a thermal, we count our 4 seconds, and then we are going to start turning. And let's just pick a direction, left or right, go for it. This 4 for 90 rule, the way you use it is that you split the sky into 4 quarters. So when you're turning out there, if I was on the ridge and I'm looking out, I'll put a quarter, if I'm, for example, I'm facing in this direction, here's quarter number 1. When I'm facing this direction is quarter number 2. When I'm facing that direction is quarter number 3, and the other direction, quarter number 4, because we are doing circles. So you split the sky into 4 quarters and do your circle. So you do the complete circle and you're counting your 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. And as you do this, and that's for 1 quarter, then the next quarter, and so on. When you complete that circle, you want to take note, where was your vario beeping the loudest? Was it in quarter number 1, 2, 3, or 4? And let's say it's in quarter number 2. So now you're coming back into your circle and you come through quarter number 1. Before you enter quarter number 2, you open up the turn. So that means you fly, you're still leaning in, but you open up the turn so that you straighten up a little bit. You count 2 seconds, 1,000, 2,000, and then you go back to your 16-second turn. So 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. What we are doing is we are now extending ourselves closer into the quarter that the lift is stronger. And if you keep doing this, you're basically centering yourself upon the best lift. And that's what you want to do. And that will help you climb the best. So doing this is about identifying, firstly, what rate must I turn at? It must be 16 seconds. Number 2, where should I move the turn? And this is what's called mapping. It's about moving your circle in the best position of lift. And you do this by identifying where was the vario beeping the loudest. And before I come to that quarter, I must open up my turn for 2 seconds and then carry on with my 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds. I should have started with this. When you do turn, there's something extremely important that you should do. You've heard your vario beeping and you're about to turn. What should you do before you turn? Richard?
Lean in.
Lean in. Before you lean in? So what you want to do is you want to look. Looking is important before turning. There could be another pilot behind you who's coming along. So look, you look, lean, and then turn. You want to, the leaning is weight shift, and that gives us a much smoother turn, a much more efficient turn. If you sit upright and only use the brakes, then it's more a yawing turn. It's not very efficient, and you're going to have to use more brake to do the same turn compared to had you used weight shift. So you want to use, first you look, because looking is important for every turn. Look, lean. How much should you lean? My rule of thumb is you want to get your nose past the inside riser. So if I was turning to the left, leaning to the left, I want to get this nose of mine over here past the riser. Is that right? Yeah, leaning in there. Yeah. So get your nose past the inside riser, and then using your inside hand to control the turn. We'll talk about that in a second. But here, this is a very simple rule, and it's just, I use 4 seconds as the golden number. Some people say you must turn after 2 or 3 seconds. Others say 4. I like to use this 4, especially with the teaching, because it holds. You wait 4 seconds before you start turning, and then each quarter of your turn is also 4 seconds. The mapping, that is the centering of yourself with the turn, is done by identifying where was the quarter the strongest, and before you come back to that quarter, you open up the turn so that you go in further to that side. What you don't want to be doing is doing left-hand turns and then right-hand turns and sharp turns and not so sharp turns, because you're no longer flying efficiently. So even if you need to move yourself, you know that the thermal, you're turning to the left and you know it's a little bit more to the right. On your next turn, before you get to this quadrant on the right-hand side, you will be opening up the turn and moving yourself there. So resist the urge to switch directions. It is extremely inefficient. Hold your direction and slowly move your circle to the best lift. Any questions?
No.
Cool. Other tips. We did the first one about noting which side of the wing or the harness lifts. That's the side you want to turn to. And the second one is to use a vario. And I started off on that section about listening to the vario. And I know there are people who say that you must develop this feeling and you should fly without a vario and it'll make you this amazing pilot. And that's their opinion. I don't think that, and it's probably because I a little bit more on the modern side. There's tools out there, and if these tools help you, then you should use them. you should not be reliant on it, that there's a difference between using something and using it for its purpose, but not relying on it. You should also not be focusing on it. You've got this Vario and it's giving you climb rates and so on. You need to be looking around you, what's going on, and not focusing on the instrument. And that's why I think as a junior pilot, just an audible Vario is perfect. And you don't need those climb rates. You know, if you're going up, yes, you're going up. And if the sync alarm comes on to tell you that you're going down quite a lot, then you know it. Whether you're going up at 2 meters per second, 2.5 meters per second, who cares? Rather have your eyes and your brain open to be, taking in what's going on and making decisions instead of looking at the instrument and then having a mid-air with somebody. But going back to the Vario, I initially tried without the Vario when I was a junior pilot, and then I got this Vario that confused the hell out of me, and I don't think it worked properly at all. And then I got an audible Vario at some point, and that just changed everything because it definitely worked properly. And now when I felt the bumps and so on, I could coordinate in my brain that, look, when the beeping starts, it feels like this. And after some time, you will see that you will in your body feel it, and okay, here comes a thermal, it's going to start beeping just now, and then the beeping happens. So it does help you correlate. The instrument is helping you correlate what the right feeling is like. And that's what's important for me. And so when you get this, and do not be reliant on instruments. So you don't have to fly with an instrument all the time. Don't use it some of the times, and then fly just on feeling. But because you've gone through the experiences of flying with an instrument that was beeping, you can correlate the feeling with what's going on. And it just makes it easier. It really just makes it easier. When we were talking about this 4-second rule about moving yourself to the better part of the sky, moving your circle, when you have the beeping going on, it's easy to know, okay, the beeping was loudest on that corner over there. And so therefore I'll go to that quadrant, I'll move the circle to that quadrant on the next turn. But if you're looking at just the mountain to tell you whether you're going up, you are doing circles. And then so it's now quite difficult to judge, was it this corner or was it that corner? And and again, your brain and your eyes need to be open to take in so much that I recommend use the Vario. It's there and it works. And especially in light climbs, a 0.5 meter per second thermal. Now, there are times when these mountains, especially our summer flying, Porterville, Piketberg, and so on, where your window of opportunity to launch it can be small. So we wait until the thermals start, and then they get going. And then some days they can get strong very quickly, and then you can no longer safely launch. So once it starts working, you want to take off. Now, taking off, and it might be because the day is still building, that the climbs are light. I'd rather have a Vario there to help me in those 0.2 and 0.5 meter per second climbs and use it and ensure that I'm able to stay up in the air, that when it gets working properly and then I go and have a decently long flight, whatever it is that you are after, rather be in the air flying, getting experience than on the ground thinking about it. And if this instrument helps, and it definitely does, then use it. And like I say, the feeling will come with this coordination. I point E over there, the brain power, and I've said it several times now. We don't have to focus on, am I climbing where or not, and what's the strongest climb? Listen to the beeping, keep your eyes open, be aware of the terrain, be aware of other pilots. Maybe there's somebody else climbing down there. They've got a nice thermal. Take your one as high as you want to take it, and then go to that clue that was left by the previous pilot. Cool. So that's on using a Vario. If there's anybody here who's not using a Vario, I would highly recommend it. And again, even if it's just the audible stuff, it can be put away in your bag or one side. You don't have to be looking at those climb rates. It's just about lift, no lift, lots of sync, because if there's a lot of sync, you don't want to spend time in sync. You don't want to be doing circles in sync unless your intention is to get out of the sky and go and land. The next one, note the thermal drift and try to identify the source. And we spoke about this on the identification and prediction. But what you can be doing over here while you're flying and you're in a thermal is look down below you when you make a circle and take note what's below you. Maybe there's this farmhouse. And then a couple of circles later, what's below me? There's this whatever point. And then looking at that point relative to the farmhouse will give you the drift of the thermal. So if you were to fall out of it somewhere, you will know, okay, well, it was drifting along this line here, along that farmhouse, going towards this other peak, whatever it is. You can, having worked this out, you can go back into that line if you've lost the thermal and try and find it again. On that point, using an instrument, and it can be something as simple as your phone, and there's plenty of free apps out there. It is useful to have your instrument that is showing a track log. You know, as you're flying, you can see the lines, because as you're thermaling, you will see the thermal drift by virtue of the lines on the screen. And when you fall out of it and you lose this thermal, go and fly back along that same line that you had just flown, and the chances are you will find the same or the next part of this thermal that's coming through. So that's really useful. But now when we come to using instruments, and now we're talking about having a screen that we look at, you know, progressively use these things. If you're just you're focusing on flying and making circles, then just the audible is fine. You do not want to be flying with your face focused on the instrument and not around you. That is dangerous. And if you're not happy doing that, then don't use it yet. Over time, you will become more comfortable with it. And then you use the instrument, you have a quick glance at it, and then you carry on flying. You're not flying looking constantly down at the instrument. That is extremely dangerous. Tip number 4 was to use the inside brake to control the turn. So we enter a thermal and we're going to choose a direction. We'll look to see that it's cool, lean, and then turn. On that turn, you want to use the inside brake. And just another tip on that, you actually want to be pulling down on that toggle instead of pushing it out. Because you see some people do fly like that, where you're pushing the toggle instead of pulling down. And the reason why pulling down is useful is because you're using your bicep muscles, which are stronger. And by using less energy, you are conserving your energy. So you will be less tired in this flight. Being tired will affect your brain power. So you want to use that inside brake using the pulling motion. The outside brake on the hand on the outside, that hand on the outside is really there just to feel. You just want to feel what's going on with that wingtip and control pendulum motion. So if the wing dives, that you can use that outside brake to arrest the dive. Or if you feel like that outside wingtip wants to collapse, there's a sudden drop in pressure, you will stab to reestablish that pressure and then release it again slowly. But what we don't want to be using lots of inside brake and lots of outside brake, because in these circumstances, you are using a lot of brake, and that's actually flying inefficiently. So you would have heard the term that you should slow down in lift and speed up in sync, and therefore you want to use the brakes to slow you down. When you are flying inside a thermal, your ground speed is essentially 0. And if you think about it, because you're no longer going anywhere, you are doing circles in kind of the same spot. So you have slowed down. You are keeping yourself in lift by doing circles, and that's why we circle. So just using that inside brake with the weight shift, you want to fly fast within that circle so that you are flying efficiently with minimum sync to go up. And I'm sure you have heard that minimum sync, you do need to use some brakes to get to minimum sync. And if you look at things like polar curves, you'll see that it's a little bit of brakes. It's not 50% brakes. It's a little bit. And if you think about it from a thermaling perspective, when you are braking with that inside brake, you are using brakes, you are slowing the wing down. So outside brake is just to control movement. If it is rock and roll, or if you are closer to the mountain or whatever hazard, use a little bit more brake just so that you have a more direct connection with that wingtip and can manage it. But when I'm flying out there, especially if I'm out in the flats away from the mountain, and I'm not worried about it, I try and use like pretty much that right hand, or the outside hand is right up. I try and use as little input as possible. And if I get a collapse on that outside, well, I'm already leaning onto the inside, and so you're doing the recovery for it anyway. And that will help you climb efficiently.
And really, the inside wingtip, that's not in danger of collapsing.
It is possible that it can collapse. It does happen, and if that does happen, then you will release the inside brake, recover, and then go back into your circle. It is possible. It's not. Usually, it's the outside wingtip, because the inside brake you are leaning into it and you've got pressure, but that's not to say that it can't happen. It can happen. Any other questions?
Nope.
Cool, guys. I know we're at